Hey everyone, I'm Andrea, your real life English fluency coach, and in today's lesson we are going to take some of the most overused words that we use daily and learn some more interesting alternatives. So I highly recommend you grab a notepad and pen so that you can write down all the words during the lesson, then you can start learning them and using them. By the way, in case you're new here, we are here to guide you beyond the classroom to live, learn, and speak English in the real world. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell down below so that you don't miss any of our new lessons. Okay, so the first word that we use every single day, we use it a lot, is yes. So instead of saying yes, there are many ways that you can reply to someone meaning the same thing. So one that we tend to say a lot more as natives is yeah. And yes kind of seems a little bit more formal, and so you might write it more in formal situations, maybe for work or university and things like that. But if you're just having a conversation with someone or you're texting someone, you're probably more likely to just say yeah. And another one that you can use is sure. So if you want to say yes without saying anything like this word, you can just say sure. So if someone says to you, would you like to meet for a coffee later? You can say sure. Well, sure, that would be great if you want to add to it. And it's a great alternative to just saying yes. Another alternative, which is maybe a little bit more American, but is definitely being used more in Britain as well now, is a shortening of okay. So you can say K. And this again just means yes, it's a way to reply. So if someone asks you, would you like a piece of cake? You might say, okay. And this is definitely more informal, so one that you would use with your family and friends. Another great one is of course. So maybe someone is asking you if you would like to meet up with them or if you would like to have pizza for dinner, and you might say of course. So there is no doubt in your mind. You are affirmatively saying, you are being very sure in what you want to say. You are definitely saying yes, and you can say it this way with of course. Another great alternative to of course as well is certainly. Now this one maybe can be used in more formal situations, but again, if someone asks you a question and you want to say yes but in a very polite and more formal way, you can say certainly. So when you really want to express that you truly mean yes, there are some great alternatives. The first one is totally. So here I'm pronouncing it with a true T, so you can hear that T there, totally. However, in American English, they would use the American T, which sounds more like a soft D. So it would sound more like totally. In British English, we could also say this word with a glottal T. So that's where the flow of air is stopped and then released. So there is a sound there, but you won't hear the T. And this would sound like totally, totally. So there's 3 different ways that you can actually hear this word, but they are used both in American and British English when you want to respond to someone with an emphatic yes, that you totally agree, for example. Some people in Britain even shorten this to say totes. I don't use this in particular. However, I have heard it a lot in the UK. Many people around the UK, instead of saying the full word totally, they might just say totes. And finally, you could use absolutely. So if, for example, someone says, oh, it's a beautiful day today, the sun is shining, you might say absolutely. So again, you agree with them without saying yes. Okay, so we did just look at this word okay a little bit when we were talking about yes. We said that some people might shorten it to say K. So rather than responding to someone with okay, you can do it this way. It's a very informal way that you could just do it with your friends, and you just want to be very quick. You'd probably write it in a text message as well, just to your friend, like if you're agreeing with something, okay. So it's very quick and easy one to use. Another alternative to okay is all right. So this is a great one as well if you just want to respond with okay, but in a different way. And you can say it with a true T at the end there, or you can just say all right. So you can say all right or all right. Another alternative here is very well. Now, this one is a little bit more British and it's probably a little bit more formal, or ones that you might hear the older generations use. So if someone says to you, oh, do you want to go out for a walk later? They might say very well. And by that, they just mean okay. Okay, so far we've focused on a lot of the positives. However, if you want to say no to someone, there are alternative ways to say this rather than just saying no. Now, one, again, that's very informal that you could use with your friends. You might just say nah. And you can hear this in British and American English. It might be elongated slightly, so you might hear nah, or you might hear someone just say nah. So it can be shorter or longer depending. Another one as well that friends tend to use a lot is nope. So sometimes no can be quite direct and very strong. If you want to soften it a little bit, you could just say nope. Now, the English culture tends to be quite an apologetic one, meaning that we tend to say sorry a lot, even if something is not our fault. And so even if someone is saying no to you, they might actually apologize whilst doing it as well, just because they want to be so polite and maybe they feel bad that they are saying no. So you might hear sorry, no, or not quite, sorry. So people will still apologize when saying no as well. Some other more formal ones that are, again, a way of saying no but also apologizing a little bit could be unfortunately not. So if you feel bad that maybe you can't do something, maybe someone says, oh, are you free to meet for dinner tonight? They might say, unfortunately not. So they feel bad, but they're not free. So it's a no. Another way to say this is, I'm afraid not. So someone again might say, are you free to meet me? Or can I call you later? And they might say, I'm afraid not. It's another way of saying unfortunately not, or unfortunately no. And then a very strong way to say no could be no way or absolutely not. So no way is probably a bit less formal, and absolutely not could be more formal, but they are very strong ways of emphasizing your no. So maybe someone wants to ask you out on a date and you say no way, and you really don't want to date that person. And then maybe in a work situation, you've asked for something in particular and your boss might say absolutely not. Or if they're being polite, they might say, I'm afraid not. Okay, now moving on to what. So the question there, what? There are better ways to say this. You might say pardon. And if you're being really formal and very British, you might say, I beg your pardon. And that's definitely in a more formal situation, maybe when you've offended someone. You've probably heard this in some older TV series from the UK as well. But definitely if, for example, you're having a conversation with someone, it could be quite rude to say what and screw up your face in this way a little bit. So it's nicer to say, excuse me. So if you didn't hear what someone says, you're having a conversation with them and you want them to repeat what they said, but without being rude, without just saying what, sometimes that can come across rude. So it's better to say, excuse me, or sorry. And moving on, some alternatives to sorry could be, I didn't mean to. So maybe you've hurt someone's feelings, maybe you accidentally tripped someone up or bumped into them and they might give you a look and you say, I didn't mean to. So you could say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, or you could just say, I didn't mean to, and then apologize however you want to apologize. You could also start off your sentence with I regret. So you could say, I regret what I did and I'm ever so sorry. Or you could say, I regret what happened and I wish I could change it. So these are some alternatives. And also maybe a more American one that is starting to be used more in Britain as well is my bad. So this is definitely a more informal one when you're with your friends. Maybe you make a joke or a mistake and you say my bad. Or even, for example, maybe you were supposed to meet a friend and you stood them up. So that means that you didn't show up to the meeting because maybe you forgot, and you would say, my bad. It's like saying, I made a mistake. So there are many times in the day where we want to say thank you, especially in the English culture, because we are quite polite. We really think that manners are very important, and so we will say thank you a lot, just like we say sorry. But there are some great alternatives to saying this. One being, you're a star. So if someone has done something very kind or has been very helpful to you, you could say, you're a star. Another one you could say is, I owe you one. So it's like you want to return the favor. So maybe they've helped you out with something. Maybe your babysitter cancelled on you and your friend has said, oh, I'll do that for you. And then by saying thank you, you can say, oh, I owe you one. So one day you could return the favor. Maybe you could babysit for them. So there are some great alternatives to this word. To show your appreciation as well, you could say, I really appreciate it, or I appreciate that, to show your thanks, to show your gratitude. You could even say, you shouldn't have. So maybe if someone gives you a gift, this is a good one to use. If someone is giving you a gift, maybe for your birthday, but you weren't expecting it, you could say, oh, thank you so much, you shouldn't have. And meaning that they really didn't have to, but it's very thoughtful and you're very thankful for the fact that they thought of you. And quite a British one here is cheers. So you might think of people actually with a glass of wine or champagne, actually doing a cheers with someone. However, we do use this as well to say thank you. It's just a nice, quick, informal way of saying thank you. So you just like cheers. Or if you want to be very British, you might even say, cheers, mate. If you'd like to learn more ways to say thank you, how to respond to it, and many more phrases that you can use in daily conversation, then I highly recommend you check out this lesson that we made with more than 55 phrases to use in daily conversation. You can click up here or down in the description box below to watch that lesson next. Now some alternatives to goodbye. So again, goodbye can be quite formal and we tend to shorten it to say bye. So rather than using the full form, you just shorten it. You could also say see you later. So you might say the full sentence here, you might say the full phrase, see you later, or see you later with a glottal T. And in American English, they might say see you later. So again, with an American T there. However, this phrase is shortened very much. So some people might shorten it to say, see ya. And that's quite an American English one. Some people might shorten it even more just to say later. So rather than see you later, you can just say later. In American English or in British English, you could say later or later. So that's with a glottal T there. And finally, it's not an English word, it is Italian. However, I hear this word used so much to say goodbye, and it is ciao. So ciao is very popular here in Spain and also is becoming more popular in the UK and maybe in many other countries too. Do you use ciao where you are in the world? Let me know in the comments. Okay, lots of people also tend to use the word like a lot, and sometimes it's necessary. However, there are some great alternatives that you could use. For example, enjoy. You could say, rather than saying, I like to have a glass of wine with my dinner, you could say, I enjoy a glass of wine with my dinner. You could also use appreciate. So I appreciate the fact that you came to speak to me first. You might say to someone, rather than I like the fact that you came to speak to me first. Another one that's maybe quite British is fancy. So instead of saying we like someone, we might say that we fancy someone. So if we think that someone is cute or there's someone that you want to date, you might say I fancy that person. And that's quite a British one there. You could also use admire. So maybe there's a person in particular that you really admire. Rather than saying, I like this author, or I like this actor, or I like this celebrity, you could say that you admire them, meaning that you appreciate what they are doing, you look up to them in a certain way. So it's much better and more interesting word to use here. And then if you really like someone, you could say that you adore them. So you might use this, for example, for some family members. You could say, oh, I adore my nephew. He is the sweetest little boy. for example, or if you really love someone, then you can use that instead of like as well. So adore means that you really like them, and then of course love means that you love someone, but it's an alternative to like. If you really strongly like them, that you love them, you could use this as an alternative. Now, good is another word that we use a lot every single day, but there are so many more interesting words that we can use here to describe various things. So good doesn't really tell us much about something. You might say, oh, I watched a good film the other day, and kind of makes you think it was okay, but nothing special. So if something was okay, you might say that it's satisfactory. So rather than it being very good, it was satisfactory. So it was just okay. So maybe good is here and something satisfactory is just below it. However, if it was good and it's better, then you might say it was wonderful. So you might say you had a wonderful day rather than saying you had a good day. And if it was even better than wonderful, you might say that it was excellent or exceptional. So these words really mean better than good. So you might even say you had a fantastic day or an amazing day or even a superb day. So all of these words are alternatives to good, and there's kind of a scale here going from satisfactory all the way up to amazing and superb. So if you want to take your English from good to superb, then I highly recommend our Real Life Native Immersion course. In this 41-week course, we'll take you on a real-life adventure of the English language in a way that is fun, natural, and convenient. Each week exploring a different topic connected to our goal to help you understand and use real native English and make it a permanent part of your life. The best part is you can try it right now for free with our 3-part power learning series. All you have to do is click up here or down in the description box below to learn more and sign up now. We look forward to seeing you there. Okay, so we've looked at alternatives to good. Now let's look at alternatives to bad. So rather than saying this word that is a standard word that people use a lot, you could say unacceptable. So if something wasn't very good, it was bad, but not really bad, we could say that it was unacceptable. This might happen at work. Maybe someone's behavior was unacceptable and it couldn't happen again. Maybe at school, a child in particular, their behavior was unacceptable and their parents have to be told about this. So that's a good alternative when it's not as serious. Now, going up the scale a little bit to things that are quite bad, you might say that something is nasty. So maybe someone said some bad words or some rude words to you. You could describe them as nasty. They described something in a nasty way, or they used some nasty words to speak to me and I wasn't happy with it. Then going up the scale, you could use terrible or even awful. So you might say, oh, I tried a new restaurant last week. It was terrible, or the food was awful. And that means that it was really bad. And really at the top of the scale, you could say that something is dreadful. So if it's really awful, rather than saying really awful, you could say it was dreadful. So another one is said, and this word is used a lot and it doesn't really tell us much about the way someone said something. So this is a great one to teach because you can use it in your writing, especially if you're into creative writing or you like writing stories. There are so many great alternatives to said. One could be suggested. So you could say, oh, my friend suggested that we go out to eat tomorrow. What do you think? Rather than saying said. You could say explained as well. So you could say, for example, if you're having a meeting at work, you could say, oh, my colleague explained that you're having a problem and you would like us to help. So again, a great alternative. It's giving us more information about what was said or how it was said. It was explained. Probably a more formal one, definitely takes me back to my legal days, is stated. So this again is a great alternative for said. It's saying that someone said something, but in a more formal way. So you might use it in a document, you might write it in a formal email or letter that this person stated that this happened. If someone is very excited about something, maybe they exclaimed some information to you because they were so excited. So, for example, you could exclaim that you got 10 out of 10 on a test because you're so excited and happy about it. However, on the other side, maybe you argued with someone. So you could say that someone argued with you, or they argued their point rather than they said their point. So you had a disagreement in that moment. And another one that's great is expressed. So we could say that someone expressed their feelings, or that someone expressed how they felt about a situation, or they expressed that they agreed with something or disagreed. Again, it's just another great alternative to said. Now looking at alternatives to angry. So again, we're going to go on a scale here from a little bit angry to very angry. So to begin with, you might be irritated by something. So sometimes if there's a fly buzzing around and you're trying to eat, it might irritate you. So it's annoying. So these are some good alternatives here when something is not so serious. Sometimes people get angry when they are offended by something. So maybe someone has said something that you don't quite agree with, or maybe they are judging you in a way, or they just have a different view to you and you could feel offended by it. So this is a good one when you are quite angry, but it's more that you've taken offense to what they are saying. And then moving on from this one where you are really angry could be furious. So this is when you are so angry, there's not a higher level of anger you could have. And you could imagine someone just screaming, "I'm furious," because they are so angry. So I wonder what situations you might think you could use this one in. Have a little think. Hopefully you haven't been this angry, or hopefully it doesn't happen to you very often. So moving on to a more positive word, happy. So happy is a word that we do, again, often use quite a lot, but there are some great alternatives. One could be pleased. So you could say, "I'm very pleased with the presentation," instead of happy. You could even say, "I'm overjoyed." So if you are feeling joyful, or there's a joyous occasion and you really want to emphasize that, you could say overjoyed. Another great one is delighted. So maybe you're having a party and you're inviting some friends and you call them up to say, "Are you free to come?" And they say yes. You say, "Oh, that's great, I'm delighted." So again, you're showing that you're really happy. So moving on to even more happy, you might say that you are ecstatic. So if you are so happy with something, you would say that you are ecstatic. So for example, maybe you won a competition, or maybe some plans that you were making have turned out really well and you've achieved lots of success, and you would say, "I am ecstatic." And a similar one to this would be thrilled. So I'm absolutely thrilled by this result. It's fantastic. Now, nice is a word that we try not to use too much. It's difficult because it allows for easy conversation and it's a word that you can use a lot. However, again, it doesn't really tell us much about what you want to say. So there are some great alternatives. If, for example, you want to say that someone was being nice, or you met a nice man, for example, you could describe him as charming. So rather than saying, "Oh, I met this really nice man," you could say, "Oh, I met this man, he was very charming." That's a much better descriptive word. You could use kind if someone has been kind to you. Another one you could use is delightful. So you could say, "What a delightful day we had," rather than "What a nice day we had." You could even use lovely, which is better as well. And finally, you could say that something was pleasant. So again, you could describe your day as pleasant, your experience as pleasant, your dinner as pleasant. There are many more great ways to describe something instead of using nice. Can you think of more alternatives to nice? Let me know down in the comments below. So instead of saying you had a hard day at work, you could say you had a tough day, a challenging day, a difficult day, or you could even say that you had a demanding day. So those are 4 much more interesting words that you can use instead of hard. Now, instead of saying best, you could say that something was the greatest, because the best means there's no better. So an equivalent to this would be the greatest. You could even say it was elite. So it was that good, it was so fantastic, it was so great that it was elite. And you could even describe something as the finest. So for example, if you are buying a nice scarf or a pashmina, you could say that it is made with the finest silk. Now, we often describe ideas or people as smart, and in Britain, if you describe someone as smart as well, it doesn't only mean their intellect. You might describe the way that they look and the way that they dress as smart. However, here we're thinking more about intellect. So you might say that someone is clever as an alternative to smart. You could say that they are intelligent. If they're really intelligent, you could even use genius. You could say that was a genius idea, or this person is a genius. If they have a lot of knowledge about a particular subject, you could say that they are wise. You could even describe them as witty. So witty is used a lot as well when we describe sense of humor. So the British sense of humor is often called witty, meaning that it is clever. So it's another way to say smart or clever here. And finally, you could also describe someone as bright. So you might say that someone is very bright, and the opposite of this would be dim. So if you're thinking about lights, bright lights as well, that means that someone is smart. Now, instead of saying also, you could use some more formal and interesting ones. You could say furthermore. So if you're talking about a particular point and you want to add some information to that, you could say furthermore and then continue your sentence. An alternative to this would be in addition to. So again, these are more formal ones, so you could probably use them in the workplace, maybe in legal documents, in emails, in letters, things that you are writing. If you're writing a paper for school or for university or college, then these are great alternatives to also. You could even use moreover, and you could also use so. So is a more simple one. You can also see that we use that a lot to connect ideas when speaking. So it's a great alternative. Now today I'm teaching you more interesting words to the words that we tend to overuse daily. However, there are more interesting ways to say interesting. An informal way to describe something as interesting is cool. So you might say that you went to a concert and it was really cool. You might say that you had a really cool day out with your friends. However, if something was really interesting, you could say that it was fascinating, or you could say that it was mesmerizing. You could even say that it was riveting. So these are some great words that you can use as alternatives. For example, you could say that you went to a museum and the exhibition was mesmerizing, meaning that it was so interesting that you just wanted to learn more and you couldn't take your eyes off it, and it was fascinating even. And finally, another word that we tend to overuse is many. So instead, you could say tons. For example, we have tons of great lessons for you on our channel here, and you can check them all out straight after this lesson. You could even say heaps. So again, we have heaps of lessons here to help you learn English. We could say plenty of, countless, and numerous as well. So these are all alternatives to saying many. So there you have it. There's tons of vocabulary for you in today's lesson so that you can enrich your English and start using these more when speaking or writing or whatever it is that you want to do. Please give me a thumbs up down below if you want more lessons like this. We can definitely have some more vocabulary lessons for you to help you reach your goals. But now it's time to go beyond the classroom and live your English. Ah, yeah. Okay, so we're starting off with an interesting fact, which most of you probably know, but in the UK, we love tea. It is a huge part of our culture, and people drink multiple cups of tea a day, rather than coffee, in fact. So it's usually the drink of choice of many people.